And remember, when you're typing stuff, it's really loud.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
No worries. I don't mind before we start, but now that once we get listeners or watchers, as we're getting a few people joining us already. That's fantastic. Once we get listeners,
oh,
a little feedback.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right, I'm in my. It's been collision all week long. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we're
just a thing, Craig. You're very echoey. Are you using the right
mic? Maybe that would help.
Wow, could you tell you had a late night last night or what?
It's been a week. My microphone was pointing all the way over there. That's awesome.
You're hilarious.
We usually catch that when we're chatting beforehand, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
All right, you can tell that it's low tech Craig today that you're getting, but it's been a crazy week, all week at Collision, and then last night was the after party we hosted. It was an amazing event. All of Collision was great, and we might as well just jump into it. Welcome back to Future Tech, your weekly source for tech and innovation and business. I'm the startup coach, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, John Irwin. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great since I didn't go out last night and go to the Startup Drinks TO, unfortunately. So I'm refreshed and raring to go.
And there's a lot going on. And all right, there you sent me a link for something in a bit, right? That's for after.
No, that's at the end.
Yeah, perfect. Just making sure. We might as well get started, and let's talk about the stuff that's been happening this week. And the first thing I wanted to mention, even though I'm not going to put it on the screen here, I just wanted to follow up with what we were talking about last week with Adobe. So have you been following what happened this week?
So the thing is I've been trying to, but I don't know what is new news and what is old news, if that makes sense. So maybe you can help.
So there's officially the SEC
I know that
has officially filed. They were under investigation before, but now there's an actual lawsuit. They've taken action. Against their policies, against their outrageous cancellation policies, all the take control stuff. So that's being sued. They did come back and say a second time, trust us, bro. Basically, when they rewrote the thing, they rewrote it. They said, give us a few days. We're going to come back and we're going to fix this. And they came back and basically didn't. So I think everyone is still up in air. Everyone's still leaving, or not everyone, but leaving in volumes. Adobe's taking a crap kicking over this.
Good.
And we're going to have to see long term. Like when the SEC starts coming after you for all this stuff, they're going to be in the spotlight for all this negative reasons, and people are going to find a reason to go somewhere else. And I'm talking to people, even at Collision, which we're going to talk about a bit, and they grab Affinity and said, within 20 minutes, they were just as productive, if not more so, than they've been with Adobe products. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent for people leaving Adobe. I don't, I hate things like this, and we're seeing more and more of these monopolistic companies doing things like this and doing things, and it's enough is enough. I'm sorry, if you want to do shady stuff like this, then pay the consequences. And I hope they end up going bankrupt over this. I really do. Like I'm really passionate about this, just as far as taking advantage of users. I know Google tracks everything too, blah 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 blah. But this is just absolutely crazy. What they did with their end user agreement.
Yeah, they all track it. I sent you a screenshot a few days ago of Google denying being able to store or edit or save a document based on what it thought was the content. It's like, you can't really what? So yeah, they're policing your stuff, even though you might not think they are. It's unfortunate. So we just want to do an update on Adobe there, because we're tracking that situation. And this week has been crazy. Like you can tell, I'm a little stuffed up, but that's because it's been week-long nonstop for the Collision conference. And it was the last Collision conference ever, because it's going to be the Web Summit going forward, a slightly different format by the same company. But having said that, there won't be people jumping in front of a big collision sign, and everything won't be collision anymore. So that was interesting. But here, this article, we were chatting a little bit before as you were prepping, you're saying here what VCs are saying about fundraising at Collision. What are they saying about the fundraising environment?
They're pretty much saying what you and I have been talking about, is that in Canada it's horrible. It sucks. They don't want to take risks. The one thing that was surprising to me, but not so much so, is that they were saying that Series C funding is kind of ground to a halt, which is not so surprising to me, because companies are now, as far as what I'm seeing, companies are now trying to not bootstrap, but trying to just continue on their own without having to give up another round of equity, right? So it's not surprising to me. Yeah. So the thing VCs are saying, work with what you have, lean. They're looking at burn rate. They're looking at all this sort of stuff. AI again is a big thing, still, obviously. But they're saying a lot of companies are still going to the US, and that's not surprising. And it's horrible, absolutely horrible. It's not only because there's a lack of VCs and investors, it's the fact that there's a lack of risk. And so they're like, Canada has always been risk averse, and this is horrible for innovation. And something needs to change. Like something really needs to change here. Sorry, I'm being very negative about this, but it's just it's frustrating that the message is still the same and it's not changing. And obviously things are going to change overnight, but still.
Yeah, with some of the new rules around capital gains tax here in Canada, they just announced in the last month, where they're capping all these things. Investors don't want to invest in Canadian companies anymore because you're limiting their growth potential. In fact, last night we had somebody who was pitching at our event. They had just finished raising the round, but what they had to do is they had to become a U.S. company, and then they got investors from the U.S. and Canada to come and invest with them. But because the investment climate was so poor here,
yeah,
it's the same founders, and as soon as they did that, they were able to close their deal. So what does that tell you?
It tells you that, to me, and it tells you that the U.S. sees more value in Canadian companies than Canadian investors see in Canadian companies. That's horrible. That's really horrible.
Well, what it tells me is that we don't have proper businessmen in our government to try and figure out what actually stimulates our economy and what doesn't. We have government that is overtaxing everything wherever they can. And, so we lose our doctors because they can only make so much. We lose our business people and founders because, great, if I build a big company here, you're going to tax me 70-something%, and I have to, why would I do that? Why would I do that? Rather than talking about how are you going to build jobs? How are you going to build growth? How are we going to keep the IP in Canada when you're literally forcing them to go to other countries?
Exactly. Yeah, it's it's crazy. Like, it's fine if you're taxing people and you're providing good service from those taxes, but like, our healthcare system's horrible. And I'm sorry to jump to this a little bit, but like, the wait time, I had someone that went to the hospital. They waited, and this is outside of the GTA, they waited 16 hours before they could see someone. And so, like, I know this is Ontario, whatever, each province is different, but you're increasing taxes, you're doing all this stuff, you're trying to tax more, but yet you're not providing a better level of service for that. And so, like, it's just you trying to cut, maybe pay down the debt that you've incurred. I don't know, but sorry. I'm very sour this morning.
Yeah, I'm a little sour too. I don't want to get into the rants around how government spends their money, because it doesn't really matter which government, they're all spending our money wrong. So it's okay. No, I'm happy to have this conversation, but I don't think our listeners are here for that.
No, but they're not here for that. No.
Yeah. So I agree with a lot of the sentiment, what you're saying around the investment climate. I interviewed a lot of startups. I was at Collision Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then we had our party yesterday where we basically Collision came to us, and it was amazing. We had a great time, and I interviewed probably 12 startups, doing actual interviews, and 3 or 4 of them had closed their deals. They
Good.
at least verbally looked like, they had their term sheets filled. There's a little due diligence and follow up and whatnot, but they were pretty happy with the event. I talked to people who weren't looking for funding or whatnot, but had products or whatever, and they had a lot of interest in partnerships and customers and whatnot. So in general, I found the people I talked to got a lot of value out of the event,
Yeah.
whether it was for investors and whether it wasn't. But like I said, there was people who had to literally move their company to the US to get funded, and now they're funded.
Yeah.
But they're at our event pitching and telling us about it. And they actually, instead of pitching their company, was pitching another charity thing because they had finished their funding round. So it's amazing that this is happening. That the government, or it's only going to take some time for people to realize the negative impact, and hopefully it looks like the government's going to change, and we'll see if it's going to huge swing back the other way.
Yeah.
Like the election in the US, it always goes
Mm.
one way and then goes the other and then goes the other. Whether it's 4 or 8 year term, people get fed up with one set of government and say, well, that's great, we liked your policies, but now we need more of those types of policies to bring our economy or whatever back into play. And then for example, they stopped using Bidenomics because the economy's not great. So and it happens. And so hopefully people will correct as you see these things and say, oh, well, these actions aren't really helping our economy grow here in Canada. It seems like we're just doing tax grabs. And how does that really help our economy, especially now? And what we're trying to do is let's give incentives instead of punishing companies, and say, all right, if you hire more people, we're going to give you more incentives. That means, instead of let's fight the layoffs in different ways, right? There's massive layoffs in the tech industry across the board, thousands and thousands. And how are we stopping that? Let's encourage companies to hire, giving them tax credits and tax breaks and doing these things, rather than saying, no, we're maximum. You can only make so much money. Otherwise, we're throwing you next tax bracket. We're going to tax the crap out of you. And businesses are saying, like, why am I even here?
Yeah. Well, the problem is too, is the government keeps getting burned with their incentives. Like, they keep giving these big companies incentives and then they take them and run, kind of thing. So it's tough, right? It's a catch-22 almost when it comes to this. But yes, I agree. Like incentivize and in the right way, and there should be some positive differences there.
Yeah, and the government gets screwed because they don't have proper business people in the government, and the deals they're making with, like the 407 or whatever, they're companies who are spending millions of dollars on their lawyers to make sure the contracts are going to go their way. So if you're not on the ball, you're going to be on the losing end of that contract. We want to see these change so that we're supporting tech better. Like, we're still doing Shred, which is great, and a lot of innovation grants and whatnot. But are we putting it in the right direction? Are we putting it in the right buckets? And that's always a time will tell scenario. But taking the money away, taking the opportunity away is not good.
No, I agree.
But overall, I've enjoyed Collision. It's been great. I got to meet a lot of very interesting people and catch up with people I haven't seen in a long time. So it was wonderful.
Yeah.
You were mentioning that Claude 3.5 has just arrived.
Yes. So Claude is my favorite. I've always preferred it over ChatGPT. And now they've come out with 3.5, which beats GPT 4.0. So that's exciting because I find you get a better output with Claude. I know a lot of people like ChatGPT, but so they released Sonnet, which is good at math, coding, and there's something else. Anyways, but yeah, it's beat. So this is Anthropic's claim, but again, it's going to be tested. But Anthropic always, whenever they come out with their next one, always seems to beat ChatGPT. So I'm not surprised that they're making this claim.
So I want to really start doing some looking into Grok because I was talking to the CEO, because you see how fast Grok is looking?
No.
Because they're saying that it's I can't remember the exact number because they were speaking at Collision.
Oh, okay.
And their model is like 10 times faster. Like it's immediately within seconds, it asks it to write a book and it's like on Word 30,000 or within
Wow.
seconds. You're not waiting for this stuff, like it's there.
Yeah.
And it's looking pretty impressive. And I don't know, again, we were talking about speed more than quality of content, so would have to do some experimentation, but I love that these areas are growing so fast.
I love it too, and I love that there's competition. Yeah, I'm excited. I haven't tried Grok yet. I don't think they don't have it in Poe, so I haven't been able to try it. But I'm just looking right now. No, I don't have access to Grok.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet either. I'm right now I'm still using OpenAI GPT-4.
Oh no, yeah, there is. Yeah, GPT Grok X2, Grok Beta. Yeah, it's here.
Perfect.
Yeah. So maybe I'll try it out on Poe.
Sounds like I'm gonna have to switch to Poe soon. You know, you've been telling me to do that, and I just haven't done it. So
it's great. The only thing that I don't like about Poe is it can't produce documents, or maybe I just haven't figured it out, at least with the native app. So I know I know ChatGPT can produce documents and different things like that. So that's the only thing.
And you usually use that with GPTs. For example, with ChatGPT, I have the Canva interface, so I can actually get it to create graphics in Canva for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay and sometimes it isn't. But like all these things, But when for example, I'm always putting in stuff around Startup Investor Drinks, trying to do promo, give me a newsletter on this, help me write on my social. And then I say, hey, you already know about this. Why don't you give me, create a graphic in Canva, help me advertise this. And it does, because once it kind of knows what you're doing already, it's already information's there. So it's not bad. And I'm not excellent at using all the different GTPs in the interface, but so we'll have to see.
Yeah, you and I will have to share prompts because I've got some good ones to share with you. So
yeah, and I think that's all we had to talk about for the latest stuff. We might as well start jumping into future tech. And let me just switch the banner here. And new laser materials discovered. And this is a Canadian University of Toronto discovery. What's going on?
Yeah, U of T. So researchers with the Acceleration Consortium, who are based at the University of Toronto, took up a challenge to use what's called a self-driving lab technology, enabled them to synthesize and test over 1,000 potential organic solid-state laser materials and discover at least 21 top-performing OSL game candidates in a matter of months. And so just a thing about the self-driving lab. So it's automation and AI to accelerate discovery, which typically would take years or decades. And this is stuff, Craig, that we've been talking about in the past, where the use of AI can help accelerate discoveries, right? So the SDL is called self-driving lab. They split tasks across different labs globally to enable round-the-clock progress. So there was a cloud platform which coordinated efforts and facilitated replication of results, which is really, really cool. Now, the cool thing about organic lasers is they offer flexibility, color tunability, and high efficiency, which is key for devices. But new materials are challenging to identify. Just to put that into context, only 10 to 20 new organic laser materials before this, only 10 to 20 new organic laser materials were discovered in the past decades, plural. So this work just blows that out of the water, which is really, really cool. So, so it's really interesting. Love that there's a Canadian university involved in this. The thing with SDLs typically in the past, right, is they've usually been confined to one physical lab in one geographic location. So this is cool. So the paper that this was written about is called Delocalized Asynchronous closed loop discovery of organic laser emitters. And it showcases what the research team conceptualized, the distributed experimentation. So this is like it could be a cookie cutter concept for anything going forward.
Yeah, this is great. And as soon as you started talking about it, say, oh, AI has got to be involved in this. As soon as you're testing 1,000 materials in like weeks rather than forever. And this is the type of thing I think we're going to start seeing some amazing advances on when we can actually test. And, side note, just briefly, I ran into Helen from Odea at Collision.
Oh, nice.
And what they do is they're using AI to, one, if you're doing cross medications, understanding all the side effects and what may impact you, but and all that, but also whenever there's something new, they're looking at off-brand medicines to figure out what if there's existing medications that could potentially treat what's out there, and they're discovering all this stuff in a much shorter period of time rather than decades, like you're saying. And using AI for this type of thing is amazing.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Just dive into this just a little bit more because this is super, super cool. But so the way that these SDLs work, they have automated robotic arms that handle sample preparation, characterization, and testing. The AI, it guides the iterative experiments based on results that explore promising compounds. Then there's a high-resolution spectroscopy that measures the emitted light properties. So, like, it's cool that you like this. This is like super future tech. That, like, the laser stuff to me is cool, but the tech behind how they discovered it to me is much cooler and a little bit scarier because now you have these automated labs that are doing things. And this is kind of what you're saying, what you're talking about as far as discovering new cures and things like that. Like this is the tech that's going to help do that.
Yeah, when you cross pollinate high-end manufacturing robotics with science, and you can say, I've got really basically have robotic chemists with all the things they need to work 24 hours a day while I go home and just look at the results, because they're literally putting this stuff in the tube, doing whatever they got to do it, running the laser through it, testing the thing, say, oh, okay, that's my result. Next. Yeah. And they're coming out with these results that we could never have done before because we just didn't have the right tools or the human capacity to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how we do it is great, but what does it mean? Like, what can these materials do better?
Yeah, so the thing with new materials, so you get a wider range of emission wavelengths potentially. So the new materials can produce lasers across the visible spectrum and into infrared, which allows a more customized wavelength selection. The other thing is there's higher efficiency. So they have a lower lasing. I know this is like lasing. Anyways, laser, but lasing thresholds, meaning you can get laser output with less input energy because lasers take a lot of energy to produce a laser. So there's a lot of energy that goes into producing. So there's the other thing which kind of goes further to the wavelengths is there's better tunability. So the laser color can be finely adjusted over a continuous range by tweaking the material's properties. So existing lasers are limited to certain wavelengths. There's going to be a faster response. So the organic materials can switch on and off much faster than conventional laser mediums, which enable high-speed modulation. Think of potentially fiber optics, things like that. There's a lower cost. So the starting organic compounds are cheaper and easier to fabricate compared to inorganic crystals or semiconductors. And yeah, there's improved stability, there's flexible format, different things like that. So they can offer big advantages in customization, efficiency, speed, cost, and flexibility compared to standard laser materials we use today. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, we are just having tons of technical issues this morning.
Just on my brain's not working.
Love it. It's all good.
How does having cheaper, less power lasers change our lives?
Yeah, so it's really cool because it enables different things. First off, flexible wearable electronics. So lasers fabricated on thin, bendable plastic substrates could integrate into clothing and devices that conform to the body, which enable new health monitoring systems. Here's the one that I was just talking about, faster communication. So the high-speed modulation of the organic lasers can improve data transmission rates in optical networks and computing. Cheaper sensors, high-resolution displays. So organic RGB lasers can give incredibly sharp, vibrant visuals for heads-up displays, augmented VR systems, even laser TVs potentially. Maybe we could get up to, I don't know, 16K TV, laser TVs, who knows? And they could be smaller, so they could miniaturize the projector. So the efficiency and tunability allows the smaller projectors maybe to have them in phones, tablets, different things like that, make them more portable. Advanced manufacturing. So having tunable ultra-fast lasers can enhance precision and throughput in material processing for like 3D printing, cutting, welding, a whole bunch of different things. And then medical therapies. So it could be used laser-based treatments for tissue, infections, cancers, different things like that.
Thanks for the comment there, Jim. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's pretty amazing characteristics of these new laser materials.
Oh, hey, Jim. Good to see you here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm really fascinated by what we could do here, and I can see why you're excited, because this sounds like this is the precursor for those AI augmented reality glasses you want, where they're thin enough you can wear, identify everybody once you got the right laser stuff in the glass.
Exactly. Yeah. And a better TV. A big TV for a small size. You could, like, those Pico projectors. That's where I'm seeing this happening too. So really cool stuff.
Is there a correlation to what in these new materials makes them amplify light so well, or is it all over the map?
I wasn't able to find any specific details on it. I didn't read the paper, which I normally do read the paper, so that's on me. So I don't. The couple things to talk about though. So lasers, they require a process called stimulated emission. So this is when an incoming photon causes an excited electron in the material to drop to a lower energy state and release a new identical photon. So to achieve this, you need what's called a population inversion. So where there's more electrons in the excited state than in the ground state, which takes energy input, usually from another light source or electrical current. So the material must allow the excitation of electrons to higher energy levels that can later decay and emit photons. So it should have a high luminescence efficiency, meaning when electrons decay at a high percentage, they release photons instead of dissipating energy in some other way. So the organic laser materials have properties like high luminescence efficiency, good optical clarity, and structures that promote uniform lasing to provide a substantial optical gain for efficient simulated emission and light amplification, which, so it based on all of the properties of these materials, it seems like we're going to achieve that more efficient, less power, all that sort of stuff.
So we got to this point, identified these materials way faster than ever. Yeah. What's the time it's going to take to actually implement some of these?
Honestly, like, I would say we're looking at, in the near term, obviously there's going to be early adoption in R&D applications, maybe 3-4 years. There's going to be prototyping, demonstration, different things like that of specialized lasers. Like, it's just so the thing with AI, right, is what I think they've done is they've trained it in this technology. And so I'm guessing AI is going to help them to build and prototype these much faster as well. But like, if we're talking like 4 to 6 years, we're maybe identify and optimize some killer applications for this that could be used, and implementation and maybe some specialty commercial and industrial lasers. And then maybe 10 plus years, we're talking widespread adoption in consumer devices. Again, we really do need to do a 10-year follow-up on all of these things, right?
Yeah, and Yeah, of course, we want to see if we're, 10 years is a lot. Some of these will obviously not make it that, but some of them will probably be faster. I guess the next question I have around these is the things that make them good for lasers. Does it make them good for other things? Do these materials enable other things other than lasers?
Potentially, yeah. And I was trying to do some research and coming up with some things. So, the organic OLEDs. So the efficient light emission could be useful for energy efficient displays and lighting. We talked about sensors, but optical sensors. So the light sensitivity could enable compact sensors for chemicals, biomedicine, and even infrastructure monitoring. The one cool one that I found was solar cells. So the tuned absorption and charge transport properties could improve the efficiency of organic photovoltaics. That's really cool. Holography. So the photosensitive characteristics could enable high resolution holographic data storage and potentially displaying of images in a holographic way. Biomedical imaging. So the emission wavelengths and flexible formats could improve bioimaging for diagnosis and monitoring. So there's a lot of cool stuff. They have unique photonic properties, which makes them promising candidates for a wide range of other applications besides just optical gain for lasers.
Yeah, solar cells I didn't think about, but that sounds like it would be almost a no-brainer if you
yeah, because we're stuck at a very it is high, but it's still a very low efficiency percentage, right, of converting light to energy.
Yeah, let's not make no bones about it. We're at the early stage of solar energy and our being able to convert it because we got a lot of loss and we can only convert a low percentage of it. But that just means as we get materials like this and we create better able to capture so we don't lose the energy as we go through the process, the better these things will become. So the more efficient and the more sooner we'll have all our houses, the roofs will be solar panels and whatnot. So
absolutely.
Any last words on this before we jump to the next one?
No, just cool. I think that the more cool thing about this is the actual how they did it as opposed to what they did, but it's still what they did is really cool. The discovery is really cool.
Yeah. And let's jump to this next one. And we're talking about post-quantum encryption. So first of all, tell us what is post-quantum encryption and why are we talking about it?
Yeah, so post-quantum encryption essentially is encryption that is quantum proof. Okay, so right now, all the encryption methods like RSA, PGP, maybe I think even ECC, they are easily broken once quantum computing becomes mainstream, becomes a thing, right? So in this article, they're talking like major tech companies like Apple, Meta, and Zoom, and they're preparing for the arrival of quantum computing by implementing PQC or post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. Okay, so these are new algorithms, and we'll get into the specific algorithms in a second, that are theoretically quantum proof. Okay, and I say theoretically because there's no real way to test it yet. So the article highlights a couple things: post-quantum crypto schemes like lattice-based and super singular isogeny encryption that are resilient to even quantum algorithms. Okay, so just to geek out here, how lattice-based cryptography works, it relies on the intractability of mathematical problems involving high-dimensional lattices. So the private keys are generated based on noisy lattice points that obscure the structure. And I think there's a picture in this article, I could be wrong, that shows it, but I could be wrong. So the security relies on the infeasibility of lattice problems like finding the shortest vector from one point to another. So it's resilient against quantum attacks, but the keys and signatures are much larger than, say, RSA equivalents. So right now, with how quantum post-quantum encryption is working, it's more robust, but as anything that's more robust, it's slower. So that's one thing to think about. So super singular isogeny, it uses abstract mathematical objects called isogenies to transform elliptic curves. So private key controls a sequence of mappings between the curves. So deriving the key sequence is very difficult without the private key due to complexity of reversing isogeny calculations. So this provides small quantum resistant keys, but again, current algorithms are really slow.
Yeah, I always wonder when they say something like it's future-proofed encryption. Like we've all heard that before, but when things like the SHA hashes and the what we're using, probably SSL, what we're using for the internet and all that stuff is going to be easily hackable soon. They have to start coming out with these new encryption models. So I'm going to put my conspiracy theory hat on and say, all right, what are the odds these are not built with a backdoor for tech or governments to take a look at? Because in the end, they're anti-encryption. They don't want your information secure. They want to look at it.
So there isn't, unless they open source and people can have a look at what is developed. Now, the actual algorithms themselves can't have backdoors, but the way that they're implemented could potentially have backdoors, and we won't know that. Just like with any encryption technology, right? But I would say because this is a potentially unhackable using quantum, who knows? There probably is a backdoor.
Well, I just assume, like, I know, people can laugh and whatnot, but when you start taking a look at that, we all know the government's stance on terrorism and encryption and all these things, and how they were trying to get rid of WhatsApp and all the different encryption so they could have access to it, and all the different platforms, Signal and Telegram. Yeah. So I just, when they start coming out with something like this, you gotta wonder how far this is going to get. And I see this is the Signal Foundation gets credit for putting this in a messaging app first, so they're obviously trying to be on top of this.
Yeah,
I like the idea. We need more encryption, but I just don't know if we're actually getting it.
No, and I do like Signal has always been at the forefront. They've been the one app apparently that has been encrypted and end-to-end encryption. I think it was before WhatsApp was encrypted. So Signal's always been at the forefront of that. So I'm not surprised that they're one of the first to roll out some sort of post-quantum encryption. And they did it back in 2023 before it was cool.
So what do you think the odds that this is actually future-proof? I'm always surprised when people say, "Oh, it'll never be hacked," but new technologies come along all the time.
Yeah, so there's cautious optimism. Will provide that these algorithms will provide long-term security against quantum attacks. So far, it's called cryptanalysis. It hasn't revealed any evidence that these algorithms can be broken by either classical or quantum computers in practical timeframes. But there's always new cryptographic advances, and these new ones, anything new that is more theoretical can always carry some uncertainty until subjected to years of scrutiny. So in the past, and we all know this, previously assumed unbreakable codes like Enigma were eventually cracked once weaknesses were found. So theorists can never rule out the possibility of a new attack that could compromise security, even from the most robust algorithms. But the thing with what we're currently at with the post-quantum encryption, it needs a lot of upgrades. It needs to be quicker. It needs to be more efficient. Not only secure potentially upgrades, but there's a lot to consider here. So the continued research and adoption and testing is going to be needed for sure.
Yeah, this is it says here that technology is still relatively new, so there could be flaws in its design that quantum computers could exploit in the future. Also, post quantum encryption isn't standardized, so every company is doing its own thing at the moment. So, there could be vulnerabilities there. And when they do this testing, I honestly, you look at this, they're testing it based on the pure hypothetical encryption rather than saying the implementation of it in Signal or the implementation of it in these things where you start to get data leakage, right?
Yeah.
Where you this is the privacy and security software will start to get data leakage based on certain things. And then you get the processor problems that they have, like on Apple Silicon and some of the others, where it's prefetching stuff. And the Microsoft will have the similar problem with its new technology because they went the same way, where you'll have all this unencrypted stuff potentially that over time you'll be able to take snapshots of and stuff. So this is great. I just wonder, it hasn't been out there long enough for people to say, all right, let's where are the data leakages here? And once we put 4 or 5 or 10 of these data points together, are we going to actually be able to do something?
Yeah. And I was just going to say the only secure way to secure your data is for it to be air gap. But as I was thinking about that, I remember reading an article where someone had created a way to hack an air gap computer using sound waves or something like that. Speaker.
Yeah. Audio. Yeah.
Yeah. So take out the speakers, and air gap it. Then maybe you're secure. But
that came from Stuxnet or the follow-up one, which was even better. By the way, that was crazy.
That scares the crap out of me.
Oh, I mean, the U.S. government going over there and destroying the scientific program of someone else just by throwing these stuff in there. But yeah, those computers were communicating via ultrasonic, via the speakers and whatnot, and being able to spread itself and data that way, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Which is why, we're talking about encryption when you start seeing these things and you start, when are we going to start seeing encryption related to, monitors? And I say that because if you read a lot of this stuff, if you can from the back or with a sophisticated enough electronic equipment from farther away to actually determine what's on the screen of a computer that you can't see.
Yeah.
So
and for those that don't know what an air gap computer is just, it means it has no connection to the outside world, essentially. I don't know if
there's no network. It's not connected to any other hardware or whatnot, but yeah.
Essentially, like a true air gap computer means it's never connected to an outside network, or it's never connected to a network. But yeah, anyways. The other thing too, just speaking about people reading your screens and encrypting the screens, apparently what I was reading an article where even if you're using a VPN and you're fully secure, they can tell who the person is based on their browsing, how they're typing, and different things like that by analyzing their.
You're fingerprinted. Your device is fingerprinted 1,000 ways from Sunday.
Yeah,
and they know your device. It doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want. They're like, oh, that's Bob.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob.
You can change your MAC address. You can do whatever you want, but they'll still know it's you.
So, we talked about Microsoft recall last week and how it immediately got hacked. So why aren't companies like Apple and Google and Microsoft implementing this when already?
Yeah, well, it's the thing of the information age, right? So previously, like companies before mass sharing on the internet, companies were working on encryption and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't brought up to it's typical. It makes sense because it takes significant time to upgrade encryption across complex IT infrastructure and services. So beginning the process now gets ahead of the potential threat. Again, upgrading encryption protocols, that requires widespread coordination between stakeholders. So companies want to drive adoption to motivate others.
But yes and no. I'm going to cut you off there for a second, just because the Microsoft recall thing is a classic example. We looking at this, we have a number of companies who've implemented this technology and put the post quantum encryption in because they're thinking, and we're looking like other companies are going to. Microsoft comes out and says this is completely unhackable, but they don't even put in the latest encryption that other people are doing. Why wouldn't they have done that? This is why I'm because it's just them. It's supposed to be completely unhackable. They don't have to share that technology with anybody. They're implementing something completely new that's not even out yet. They could have put whatever they wanted on it, but they decided not to.
So let me summarize why they're doing this. It generates positive PR.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason they're not doing it and take a step back is they're trying to train their AI on all your data and stuff. So if they lock it up with this quantum stuff, they're not going to be able to look at it unless, they have the back doors that we talked about.
Exactly.
So when are we all going to have everything encrypted on all our devices using post-quantum encryption?
It's a good question.
You were just talking about how long it's going to take. I guess this is probably a 10-year migration, even though, 10 years is funny, but people are implementing it now. But it takes a long time for the whole industry.
I'm even going to say 15, 20 years, because look how long it took to get even just encryption, like people to start using encryption. It's just recently in the last, 10, 15 years?
Yeah. And is there going to be a PGP style version that anybody can use for this? Or is this going to require expensive computing power?
I hope so. Yeah. I hope there's going to be a PGP type post-quantum encryption solution. But who knows? I think there will be, though. Given the people, given the focus on this, I think there's going to be something like that. Yeah.
Any last words before we jump to this last one? The next one?
No.
All right, let's talk about it. So, turquoise hydrogen. Is it the end of hydrogen as we know it, or what's going on?
So so when I first read this, I'm like, what the F is turquoise hydrogen, and why are we talking about it? What is, so turquoise hydrogen, it's weird. This article, it kind of misleads you, because again, I don't think that turquoise hydrogen is the end all solution, but let's dive into it. It's produced from methane pyrolysis, which is splitting natural gas into hydrogen and solid carbon at high temperatures. So right there, I'm thinking lots of energy to produce this, right? But it's considered zero emission since no CO2 is released, unlike standard blue hydrogen production. So turquoise hydrogen combines the advantages, apparently, of green hydrogen's zero emission and blue hydrogen's use of natural gas infrastructure. So in this article, they're saying early cost estimates show it could be cheaper than other forms of hydrogen production. But it's weird because when you talk about methane pyrolysis, you need to reach temperatures of 1,300 degrees Celsius. And that requires specialized reactors like nickel-based alloys, which adds a lot of complexity, right? The thing is, too, is the solid carbon byproduct is mostly pure carbon black, which it does have established uses, but you need sufficient demand for that, right? So even at scale, turquoise hydrogen still relies on natural gas. So we're still not using a renewable source, right? So there's I don't know. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this, but they're going to need pilot plants. They're going to need major infrastructure pipelines, just like hydrogen as well. But what they're saying is it does boast affordability and zero emission potential, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah, I'm curious. How does this compare to? And I'm going to get the name wrong. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I got it wrong when I was looking at it. I'm going to say taurine or the simplified, the new version of hydrogen. Move aside hydrogen. We've got this new version coming, and you gotta. It was created a different way. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. Otherwise, I'm talking out of my butt here.
I don't know, but I could talk about how it compares to other fuels.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But I don't know specifically, about taurine. So versus green hydrogen, it's cheaper. So Turquoise hydrogen is cheaper due to lower electricity input costs, which doesn't make sense to me if you need a reactor. But green hydrogen has a more renewable footprint by using solar and wind electricity rather than natural gas, which I love. Green hydrogen is my go-to. Blue hydrogen versus blue hydrogen, turquoise avoids the need for carbon capture and storage associated with blue hydrogen, which makes it potentially cheaper. But blue hydrogen is way further along commercially. If we're talking about versus biofuels, so it benefits from leveraging existing natural gas infrastructure, but some biofuels can be utilized in current engines and motors with fewer modifications. If we're talking about versus electrification, obviously it provides an alternative to direct battery electrification, and so this is good for long truck hauling, trains, things like that. So they're saying it's cost competitive. There's an infrastructure advantage, and decarbonization potential makes it appealing. But I can't get on board with this based on and maybe it's just me not understanding. And I did do a little bit of a dive into the reaction and what reactions occur and how to produce that. But like using a reactor just seems to me like, why? And natural gas too.
Yeah, as soon as you're talking about something that is that kind of temperature, you're talking about significant energy, but maybe not. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something. So, like just to dive into it a little bit, the process involves exposing natural gas to very high temperatures to split it into so it's just it just baffles me as to why they're exploring this with such because of what's needed to produce it, when there are, I think, blue and green hydrogen is my favorite, are much better potential.
Well, maybe it's because of the natural gas infrastructure that we have that allows almost anywhere a plant to be built or someone that can convert the natural gas to hydrogen, because instead of shipping the hydrogen around, you're just shipping the natural gas, which we know how to do.
For sure. Yeah.
And this was the article I was talking about, tauonium. I'm sure I said, I think I spelled
Ammonium. Yeah.
mentioned it wrong. And that's looking like a future potential hydrogen replacement, but it's again a future thing, where what we're talking about here is it's just a new way of creating hydrogen.
Yes. Yeah. A new, I wouldn't say efficient way, but that's what this article says. So,
well, it's interesting to see this and compare it to, say, the Toyota's ammonia engine.
Yeah.
And to see how they're using ammonia, you're using natural gas, other people using different things to create hydrogen. I like that we're coming at it from different angles, but I'm not sure how green, or I guess it's not when it's blue hydrogen, what the impact is when you're using natural gas.
Yeah. And it seems like, speaking of the ammonia, it seems like Toyota is going deeper into that. So it seems like they're not all in, but they're putting more of their chips into that ammonia engine. So it's really interesting to see. I still think green hydrogen is the way to go. You can create it from electrolysis, so you don't need any other fuels. You just need electricity and water. So, and metal, obviously, to create the reaction. But yeah.
And we're seeing more and more advances in the whole hydrogen space, so it won't be too long, I would see, as we start to see a major migration, unless we see a change in technology or a new something come along. They have to bet on a horse and put some infrastructure in place, because it's billions of dollars of infrastructure you got to put down, and you can't be changing every 6 months because something new's come out.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a great technology. I like where we're going. I'm curious as to all the new forms of, or new sources of hydrogen we're going to get. And I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to see more and more of these in our area, and we have to see those hydrogen prices come down.
For sure. Yeah, well, as new technology and advances get developed, and I think we're gonna get there. But I think I honestly think this is the fuel of the future for sure. I don't know what color hydrogen, but something's gonna be.
Definitely. So, what do you got going on outside of this, John?
Yeah. So one thing I didn't send you the link to, but I'm getting involved in this in a film production. So we've got the Monarch production that I'm getting involved in, separate from tech, which is really cool. So we've got a few films with a couple big name actors that we're working on, which is kind of interesting, something different. But what I just signed up for this week is I will be next month. I've signed up to get certified for skydiving, which means I do ground school and then I do about 10 different types of dives and then I get certified.
So, how long? When is this taking place? Sorry.
July, end of July, closer to the end of July.
So everybody watching this, probably by mid to end August, I'll be looking for a new co-host. So, message me.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. Yeah.
It sounds like fun, but not my type of fun.
No. Yeah. It's like a pre-midlife crisis. I don't know. I just figured, what the hell? Might as well. I've done it once. I did it when I did it for charity, raised money and did it, and I loved it. And I'm gonna have to get myself a GoPro though before I do it, so I can capture all the jumps and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And that technology is definitely coming along quite a bit. So those GoPros are better and better all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you have going on?
Well, I'll be launching our big course launch program in the next 3 weeks.
Awesome.
We're just finalizing it now. Our next big live in-person event is the Futurist After Party on August 13th. But we are doing a few webinars between now and then. On July 10th, we're doing one on objection handling for startups, like how most of the people don't have an idea of how to handle objections, don't have an objection handling sheet, they don't have any of this stuff. And hopefully we'll go through some live objection handling, what people are experiencing then, which will be interesting, among other things. So look for those webinars, look for all our upcoming stuff on torontostarts.com. And I think that's all I'm going to push today. Go to torontostarts.com to get our Future Tech podcast where all this comes out, or check out the Toronto Starts YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything, John, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.